Well, Sharoof, Kilja, these are all very welcome to um, this Governance and Strategic Planning Committee held on April Fool's Day. But I trust that we'll get through the business of significant business of this committee without too many slip-ups. I am going to hand straight over to our Chief Executive to take members' attendance and apologies.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, and good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, members of the public. Dear members of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend this monthly meeting of the committee, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically here in the Council Chamber, Tuesday, 1st of April at 4 o'clock. And starting as always with the roll call, Alderman Cook. Alderman Hussey.
Aye.
Alderman Wilkinson. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Sandra Duffy.
Shaw.
Councillor Farrell. Councillor Hart.
Shaw online.
Councillor Heaney. Councillor Jackson.
Shaw.
Councillor McDaid. Councillor McGinley.
Shaw.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor O'Farrell.
Go on, John.
Councillor Tierney.
Here, John.
Thank you, members. And Councillor Heaney is online. Thank you, Councillor Heaney. Thank you, members.
Thank you, John. Moving on to the broadcasting statement, and I'd like to remind everyone physically present at the meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes, and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded they only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility they request to speak. A copy of the Council's privacy notice may be found on the Council website. Members, I would like to emphasise that point. There are members in attendance today, or there are people in attendance today who will be relying on the ability to lip read to follow the meeting. So anybody online, if you're contributing to the meeting, I would ask for you to turn your cameras on while speaking, just to facilitate all those that are attending today. Moving on now to declarations of members' interests. Councillor McDaid.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be on the safe side, I'm going to declare an interest for the deputation as a staff member in McGee, and also in item 24 as a member of Seastone Pine Oaks.
Okay. Any further member declaration of interest? No, and none online. John, can we record Alderman Wilkinson's attendance? Okay, moving on now to item 5, and I just want to take this opportunity to welcome Kathleen Feeney and Stella O'Donnell to the Chamber today. I would like to welcome all of those who have taken the time to come and attend to the meeting today in person in the public gallery, and I would like to welcome all those that are watching online. The expansion of the university is something that is really exciting for the city and district and the entire Northwest. It's something that this council has been leading on in relation to campaigning, and there's very few voices within this chamber that hasn't recognised the significance of the expansion of the university and the economic benefits that it's going to bring to the Northwest. But it doesn't come without its challenges. We do know that there's been discussions going on internally within council for many years. There was, as part of the local development draft plan strategy, there was significant discussions around the protection of residential character and ensuring that our communities are retained, particularly in areas that are adjacent to our city centre that are feeling the pressure, already feeling the pressure around not just the university expanding, but the huge demand for housing. So this is a topic that has been that has been given quite considerable attention by council. I know there's a lot of work that's ongoing. There's a policy in place as part of our draft plan strategy, and I know that there's asks from residents, and as being part of those meetings, I can see an alignment between what the asks are of residents and what the aspirations of this council have had, and the conversations that have been taking place in working groups. So this is something that it's timely. We are entering into a process where we're entering into the local policies plan stage of our LDP, and where we're going to consider where the flat zone would be, and this is something that that I know that it's gathered a lot of interest, and rightfully so. So I suppose to further inform councillors as they engage in that process. I think it's really important that residents groups like yourselves are given the platform and feeding into the process. So I'm delighted to see you here today, and I hope that this is going to be the first of what will be a series of engagements as we move through the process of the local development plan. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Kathleen and Stella to the committee today, and I'm going to hand over to yourselves. You have approximately 10 minutes, and there will be an opportunity for questions and answers afterwards. So you are very welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, we wish to thank Mr. Kelpie and the members of the committee for accepting our request to address this meeting today. We also wish to thank those who support our campaign for attending today's meeting inside and outside. We delegates are here to represent CRAM, concerned residents around Magee. My name is Kathleen Feeney and my colleague is Stella O'Donnell. The format of our presentation is a series of 7 slides and a concluding video. This is not an April Fool's. CRAM, Concerned Residents Around Magee, is an active community group made up of residents representing the streets around Magee, the hotspot zones 1 to 7. CRAM was established in response to lived experiences of the consequences of oversaturation of HMOs in streets around Magee, some already exceeding 30%, including student accommodation, bedsits, bed and breakfasts, hostels, guest houses and houses let to lodgers. We are a group who supports local residents if and when they need it. CRAM meets regularly and communicates through WhatsApp and Facebook. It is in contact with other community groups and agencies and individuals in Derry and beyond. For example, the Outer West Regeneration, GDI, 7 Streets, Community Places, etc. Members of CRAM attend monthly Ulster University Community Forum meetings with other groups and individuals who have similar issues. After lobbying and requests, CRAM has recently been invited to engage with you in the DCSDC. But engagement is not enough. CRAM fears further ghettoisation of the streets around Magee and the creation of a dairy Holy Lands. Our current campaign is for an immediate 10% cap on all HMOs in the streets around Magee. Save our community.
As Kathleen mentioned, CRAM was established to address the rapidly changing character of our residential areas. Our priority as residents and voters is to make you, our council, hear our united voices. We are residents that have had to quickly get organised and become informed on areas relating to the planned detrimental changes via the LDP coming to our streets, parts of which it seems our council has tried to quickly and quietly rubber stamp. We have read in papers and heard on the radio how different agencies have been engaging with residents. Well, we are those residents, and we can assure you that level of engagement is not happening. We have had zero feedback or information from the council, the task force, or Ulster University that has not been initiated by CRAM. Therefore, local residents should be involved directly in conversations, plans and proposals being made on behalf and alongside the council, being made on our behalf. We reject the view that our claims are perceived and not reality. Our claims are lived experience, and as you will know from the recent Plan for Neighbourhoods from Westminster, no one knows the priorities of the community better than those who live and work there. Mr. Kelpie, at the Ulster University meeting in February, you apologised as CEO on behalf of the council. You said you were sorry if we got it wrong. Now is the opportunity to get it right. We are calling on Derry and Strabane District Council to act now and adopt a 10% HMO managed area cap in the first 7 hotspot areas identified in your HMO study. This cap needs to be adopted immediately as the flexibility and uncertainty of the transition period is already being flouted. It is imperative that the current gold rush of developers taking advantage of our council's lack of policies is stopped. Advice from corporate planners to take refused applications to the PAC as there is a high approval success rate further demonstrates a weakness in the planning system. Our 10% cap priority concerns the preservation of our historic, sustainable and balanced communities through ongoing representation of our neighbours, your constituents, who from our campaigning are more informed, asking more questions around the plans for the area and wanting answers from those that represent them. Many residents are despondent by the council's lack of transparency and engagement. The continued approvals of HMO and character-changing developments, including flat conversions, guest houses, B&B, Airbnbs, in our already extremely dense residential area, where houses are separated only by a single brick, is causing immense stress and anxiety to residents. The character of an area is not determined by the colour of your front door. The character concerns the people and the atmosphere, and our priority is to protect that. We have learned that many of our neighbours are vulnerable and or elderly. Many lack the ability to understand and navigate the planning process, and many lack confidence in themselves and the council. We have neighbours who are afraid to object, fearing termination of their tenancy as their landlord cashes in on the gold rush, pocketing 4 or 5 times the rent by letting single rooms. These residents say that if they lose their home in favour of an HMO, where would they go? Our priority is to make sure our neighbours, your ratepayers and your voters are supported and feel confident to object to the ghettoisation of our local area.
Right. Okay. It's in the wrong order.
What side is it?
It should be slide 4 in the wrong order there. You slide 4. No.
Which one?
We're looking for the consequence of oversaturation. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Recent radio foil freedom of information request shows 80% plus of the licensed HMOs in the Derry-Strabane Council area are in the Cram area. Numbers of 170 and rising. Recent information from the Outer West Regeneration Northern Ireland, January 24, ranks Rosemount and surrounding area 68 out of 890 as the most deprived. 50 out of 890 within the living environment table, which identifies shortcomings in the quality of housing, access to suitable houses, and outdoor physical environment. 26 out of 890 within the housing quality, the proportion of domestic dwellings in a state of disrepair. Cram is convinced that these existing problems are being compounded by HMO oversaturation, and we fear for the future. Our lived experiences of the consequences of HMO saturation include social problems. According to the Derry City and Strabane District Strategic Growth Partnership, record crime has increased in the city and district since 2017. We regularly experience increased antisocial behaviour in our streets, including noise nuisance, public drunkenness, vandalism, burglary, broken car windows, nail scratching, etc. We have been in contact with the PSNI and the DCSDC community safety wardens during many incidents. In response to a freedom of information, the DCSDC provided a complaint report for BT4 rate for the years 2023 to 24. Community safety warden call-outs due to ASB and CRAM compared to other areas. The total between 2023-24 was 95, and 27 of those, 28%, were within our areas. In 2023 alone, 11 out of 56, 20% were in our areas. And last year, 2024, 16 out of 39, 41% of the ABS incidents were from our area. In the third quarter of 2024, the average home insurance price in Derry and Strabane has risen by 59% from the previous year, making it the second most expensive place for home insurance in the UK, only behind Newry, Mourne and Down. We fear that if the LDP plan is adopted and we will become a 30% HMO managed area, this will increase our insurance premiums further. Environmental. Stakeholders in the independent review of the DCSDC 2024 stated that a good planning service prioritises their environment. However, this is not our lived experience. The transient nature of HMOs means that there is a noticeable difference in the upkeep of short-term rented accommodation compared to private-owned properties, resulting in daily experience of squalor, litter, rubbish, fly tipping, bodily fluids, dereliction, neglect of houses and gardens, street blight, letting boards, often by the same developers and the same estate agents, fly posting and security grills. Parts of our areas are descending into slum. These consequences fly in the face of conservation guidance and principles in the documents McGee Conservation Area and the Clarendon Street Conservation Area, where it says conservation is as much about people as places. The character and appearance of a conservation area is inseparable from the physical fabric of which it is made. It is important, therefore, that anyone intending to carry out any work in a conservation area which affects its buildings, their settings, their trees, their open spaces, or their street scenes, consider the implications and see all prospective changes, however small, within the context of the wider impact. Our economic problems. We have concern for the economic future of our area. There's increasingly an orientation towards a very specific market, for example, cafes, pubs, takeaways and letting agencies, catering for students and other transient occupants. Studentification is leading to a fluctuating market from high demand in term time and low demand in vacations, negatively affecting our local businesses. Water, sewage and waste capacity is being compromised. Increased number of adults in HMO usually means more bathrooms, more water use and consequently more pressure on the water and sewage. Waste capacity such as rubbish disposal and street cleaning is also under pressure. The generic problems, probably the most serious of all, car parking. The increase in numbers of HMOs in our residential area is putting pressure on an already limited on-street parking spaces. This results in parking on footpaths, double yellow lines, corners, and the obstruction of pavement compromises the safety of pedestrians, including the disabled, the elderly, children, and parents with prams. Access by emergency vehicles, utilities, cleansing, buses, delivery vehicles is also regularly restricted. Many of the developments are contrary to parking policies. For example, policy AMP7 of PPS3, where it says they would prejudice the safety and convenience of road users since adequate provision cannot be made for the parking of vehicles which would be attached to these developments. The TR5 of the Derry Plan is also compromised. That's car parking provision in developments. Who is responsible for deciding the number of parking spaces for HMO? There appears to be a disagreement between planning and the DFI on this, and this results in inconsistencies. At present day, there's no specific reference to HMOs in Parking Standards DFI 2005, and therefore it's unapplicable. The 0.6 parking space per room in terraced houses in highly densified areas is meaningless in regards to a HMO. This may be applicable to family homes, but not when the house is occupied by unrelated, ungovernable adults. There's not only disproportionate demands on public services like cleansing and policing, housing and planning, but also indirectly a drain of resources away from provisions in other areas of the city. The decline of our community. We believe that the increase in HMO demand is destroying community cohesion, encouraging emigration and making immigration almost impossible, with the result that there are fewer elders who retain past memories, fewer adults, present campaigners, and fewer children, the community's future. As student numbers continue to grow, HMO spread is resulting in displacing residents and diminishing the stock of affordable housing for families and other households to buy or rent. Disruption. Most owners and occupiers of these HMOs are absentee, like the gentleman who appeared in the Journal today, who was complaining about the impact of restrictions. The young and the old especially are isolated, losing their peers. And the neighbourhood loses its community spirit, its social networks, its social norms, and its social sanctions. Our schools are crucial to sustaining a community, not simply educating the next generation of residents, but providing a vital social nexus. Despite most local schools wanting to prioritise children from the catchment area, principals in our area have voiced concerns about the drop in numbers. One of them said, the excessive level of HMOs in the local area is changing the face of the Rosemount community. The decrease in families living in the area and the transient nature of the current population is also affecting school enrolment. Community spirit and physical environment are also affected. Without drastic and immediate action, Rosemount will be irreparably damaged. They also fear a 30% reduction in family homes will continue to affect school numbers as families depart and detrimentally affecting the whole community, ironically reducing education. The deep and rapid changes are felt acutely. The population imbalance itself is stressful, public oppression, private isolation. The declining amenity is alienating, the fear of crime, the revulsion from squalor, the exclusion from the economy. And talking to residents, the feelings range from apathy to anger and despair at their disempowerment. While campaigning, one particular resident stated, "What's the point when their minds are made up?" To negate the consequences of this oversaturation, engagement is not enough. We want action now. We want change of policy now. We want an immediate 10% cap of HMOs now. Save our community.
slide. I'm conscious of time, members. Is there much left of the presentation? And I really don't want to cut it short, but
I did request 30
Yeah.
minutes.
and that's the first I've heard of that.
Because of the complexity.
Oh, I understand that, and I know there's a lot of what's been said here it's really important. And I have no intention of curtailing the discussion. A lot of it has already been discussed at great detail. The concerns that have been raised are concerns that members are continuously raising.
If you require, I'm prepared to propose a suspension of standing
Yeah,
orders to
you-
allow the extension.
It's not required. It's the discretion of the chair, and I have no intention of curtailing it. I just,
Sorry to interrupt you. All I can say is
what I'm asking is a wee indication of how long we've got left. No, it's
slide 5.
Yeah.
And there is 7
And-
slides.
as the slide as so I'll pass over to yourself, Stella. Go ahead.
Okay, so just to be clear, CRAM members welcome the increase in student numbers at McGee and the promised local positive economic effect these students will have in the city is much needed and welcome. We are not anti-student. We are pro-sustainable and balanced communities. CRAM members attend the Ulster University Community Forum. This forum permits us to engage directly with the university representatives and other agencies. It is an opportunity to share the lived experience of residents who are worst affected by living so close to the campus. It is clear from our discussions that there is no ambiguity about our concerns, and the university reps appear sympathetic to the difficulties inflicted on us by their business. Sadly, though, there are no proposed solutions. We have no engagement with Northwest Regional College at all. Their silence on the negative impact their students have on the local area is deafening. Fee-paying students are the customers of Ulster University and Northwest Regional College. Both settings acquire substantial income from FE, undergrad, postgrad, PhD, and international students, as well as multiple government grants, charitable donations, and investments. However, it appears there is an abdication of responsibility of our local F and HE businesses and their partners to direct any of this funding towards the creation of significant student living accommodation, whilst their student numbers increase with every new academic year. Ask 14 of the task force report addressed the glaringly obvious accommodation issue, and Ulster University acknowledged the challenges related to student accommodation and large teaching spaces, which must be addressed before further growth can occur. That further growth is happening right now. What plans do our education settings and their partners have in place to ensure this growth can be facilitated without destroying our community? Plan A is a reliance on private developers and landlords to provide HMO through the 150-bed head lease scheme, equating to roughly 30 new HMO. So whilst in our discussions, Ulster University is making all the right noises and appears sympathetic to the HMO issues in the area, they are pressing on, providing financial incentive and enabling further overprovision. We ask for transparency on the location of these new HMO and if their approval has already been promised by the Council. Also included in Plan A for sourcing accommodation is to wait and see which private developer will or even might step up to build purpose-built student accommodation. So until there is a purpose-built student accommodation block applied for, approved and built, the plan is to continue as normal. There is no Plan B. Make no mistake about it, both settings are looking after their own interests, regardless of the impact on the local area. With no policy relating to HMO numbers and the admission of C2 classification for HMO as temporary dwellings in the 20-year-old parking standards document, and with each HMO planning application considered on an individual basis, ignoring the cumulative effect of overdevelopment, landlords are taking absolute advantage of the opportunity to be seen as pro-expansion, masquerading as Ulster University and Derry's saviours. They are removing single dwellings from a much-needed housing stock in favour of a much greater financial gain. Why do students take priority over local people looking for a long-term home? Despite multiple examples of the impact of studentification and over-provision of HMO and other temporary forms of accommodation on our communities nationwide, including the Holy Lands, Ulster University, North West Regional College and their partners, including our own council, have done nothing to date to stop this happening in our areas. CRAM agrees that purpose-built student accommodation is needed, not just for first-year students, but for the entirety of HE and FE students' time in the city. Along with the 10% cap, this will reduce pressures on the surrounding community, including occurrences of antisocial behaviour in our otherwise quiet residential streets. 4-year accommodation must not be positioned in the middle of our dense residential areas. They must move towards the city centre, riverfront and beyond to prevent the ever-worsening issues, including parking caused by Ulster University and North West Regional College students and staff. Day students, HMO residents, their friends, their family members bring their cars to our street and leave them in the same spot for extended periods whilst walking to their destination, forcing long-term residents to park away from their homes, sometimes on different streets, if they can find a space. HMO, student village and day students park anywhere and everywhere, mounting footpaths, blocking pedestrians, stopping access to and from our homes. Attempting to walk, or worse, drive along Park Avenue, Rosemount Avenue, streets in the Glen, Duncragan Road, Lawrence Hill and through Aberfoyle during term time highlights how bad and unsafe this situation is. Unfortunately, the Ulster University Duncragan Road car park does not even touch the sides of the parking and congestion issues caused primarily by their students and staff. DFI confirmed FE and HE settings are classified as D2 in the parking standards document, requiring 1 parking space per 4 students, plus additional spaces for staff. Why does this not apply to Ulster University and North West Regional College? Is there a Derry and Strabane District Council loophole that we have missed? Something needs to address this urgently. Telling students and staff to be mindful and considerate of local residents is not working. Asking them not to bring their cars is not working. An Ulster University still in draft form transport plan, and once again a reliance on others, including TransLink, to solve the issue is not working. Increasing our local area to 30% HMO, failing to classify HMO properties correctly, and continuing to adhere to the dated 2011 Derry area plan boundaries, including flat zones, will only make matters worse. No restrictions on other temporary accommodation in our area will only make matters worse. Landlords, education settings will find and flout every possible loophole to provide temporary student accommodation in the local area. It is not our responsibility to mop up the failings of poor planning of Ulster University. A 10% cap allows us to preserve our community, but also to play our part in welcoming students to the area. A 30% cap will destroy us, and we must not let that happen.
My voice is that loud, you'd hear me anyway, I could shout. You're a teacher in me. Know the role of planning or responsibilities of planning. That's it. Thank you. Confidence in the planning system in Northern Ireland, and particularly in the Derry and Strabane area, is low. CRAM considers the system is not fit for purpose when it comes to managing houses and multiple occupancy HMOs. An independent review of the DCSDC planning service in 2024 provided an analysis of stakeholders' feedback and performance compared to other Northern Ireland planning authorities. The review states the service needs to become more customer focused with a complete overhaul of thinking. In the review, the second highest response was from residents related to houses of multiple occupancy HMO, with significant concerns regarding concentration of HMOs in area characterised by large family homes, in particular due to parking, waste, noise and antisocial behaviour. The review states that the LDP should be the cornerstone of the planning system. The LDP draft plan strategy is considered by the present council and partnerships agencies to be sound. We question this and identify areas that need much more development. The lack of proactive planning. The present system fails to proactively identify and regulate areas where HMO development might be problematic. Concentrated clusters and sandwiching already exist, with some streets 30% or more, Argyle Street, for example. This results in problems of parking, overcrowding, neighbourhood disruption, and inadequate housing standards. Our lived experience are that the planning process favours the applicant. There is a lack of reliable data collection and analysis on HMOs to inform planning decisions and identify potential issues. We challenge the claim that the EVB 16B HMO study that was December 2019 used to inform the LDP was an evidence-based study. It was a desk-based study, a secondary research study, and therefore has limitations including reliance on existing data, potential for outdated or biased information, and limited control over data quality and accuracy. For example, within that document, there's a designated area 3, Nicholson, that I live in. It states that there is on-street parking and a large amount of availability. Our video shows evidence to the contrary. There's a very complex objection process. Our experience of objecting to planning permission for a HMO is confusing, convoluted, with unclear criteria causing delays and uncertainty for objectors. Our lived experience is that the planning process favours the applicants, as I already said. It is a legal requirement for neighbours to be notified about planning application. This is from the Community Places Guide to Planning in Derry and Strabane. But often residents in close proximity to the dwelling are not informed of the application and have to go and chase it up with other neighbours. When more than one planning application is submitted for a street, objectors must have to start the same old complex all over again from scratch. Late and sometimes altered submissions by the applicant are commonplace. The planning portal and HMO licence register are hard to navigate, frequently experience faults, and have different criteria. A HMO is considered sui generis in a class of its own. Planning permission is granted per room. The licence is per occupant. Plan consider this to be misleading and inconsistent, and it will affect the planning committee stage. The fact that the Belfast City Council's NI-HMO unit administers the regulation of HMOs on behalf of each of the Northern Ireland 11 Council only adds to more difficulties and confusion for objectors. Objectors have no third-party right of appeal, despite the Human Rights Act of 1998 and the adoption of a third right of appeal in the Republic of Ireland since 1963. We believe the appeals process is unfair and biased in favour of the applicant and those who can pay for experts. There should be an opportunity for those third party who are disadvantaged by planning approvals to seek redress from an independent body. The current remedy, a legal challenge by those directly affected by the development, is a difficult process and the costs are prohibitive. The Council struggles to effectively monitor and enforce planning regulations regarding HMOs in our area, leading to potential non-compliance issues, retrospective planning and non-registered HMOs. All landlords in Northern Ireland, including those of houses in multiple occupancy, must register with the Landlords Registration Scheme. The website is currently malfunctioning, giving unreliable information and leading to more time-consuming checking of information by phone by objectors. Is there presently specific planning and building regulation inspections which apply to the interior and exterior of all multiple occupancy refits in the area, whether they be Airbnbs, guest houses, bail houses, flats or HMOs? Or is it simply taken as face value? Inspections are not carried out If inspections are not carried out, this can result in flouting of regulations by developers. We have witnessed the clear lack of joined-up working, accountability and coordination between different agencies. The government departments, planning, HMO register, DFI, further education, TransLink, etc. One hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing, and residents are given the runaround trying to make sense of it all. The stakeholders' views in the independent review include that planning systems should be professional and efficient, keeping people informed throughout the process, and should be based on openness and fairness. However, lack of consistency and transparency with us residents has led to trust and confidence issues. Our concerns are not being adequately addressed by our planning system. Talking to residents with their lived experience, the feelings range from apathy to anger and despair at their disempowerment. The LDP Housing 13 states that within designated HMO areas, planning permission will only be granted where the numbers of HMO do not exceed 30% of the dwelling units within the policy area. Outside of these HMO management areas, permission will only be granted for further HMO development where the number of HMOs does not exceed 10% of the dwelling units on the road. Why is it 30% per area in the HMO managed areas and 10% per road outside the HMO managed areas? No evidence has yet been provided on the location of the HMO management areas, the hotspots. However, it's assumed, without engagement with us residents, that these will be designated in residential areas around the university and the regional college. Why are we residents being treated less favourably than those in other areas simply because of our proximity to these education? We believe that this is discriminatory and will lead to further glut of HMOs, ghettoisation. Housing 14 states that any proposed HMO must not exceed 4 bedrooms and the original property must be greater than 150 square metres. This will take years to adopt, and even then can be easily flouted due to inconsistencies between planning and licence. 4 bedrooms does not necessarily mean 4 people. Members of the Council's Planning Committee at its meeting on the 22nd of January agreed that all applications for HMOs where they would lead to more than 10% in the street would be brought to Planning Committee for consideration. We deem this meaningless for most cases in our streets. Based on our experiences, most of these applications will still be approved in the interim period. The unanimous vote to discuss HMO applications above 10% does, however, demonstrate that you councillors at least recognise there's a problem. Given that the LDP took 10 years to complete, it is possible that the local policies plan could take at least that long, resulting in not only further and unacceptable HMO saturation, but also continued overdevelopment of family homes around the campuses. There is fear that it will be almost impossible for these planning decisions to be reversed after LDP adoption. In the task force meeting in Magee on the 6th of February, Mr. Kelby, you promised a different way of working is at hand. We trust you will honour your commitment. Thank you.
I think everybody's going to be as relieved as I am. This is our last talking slide. Okay, this is on our demands. CRAM proposes an immediate cap at 10% HMO approvals per street in the hotspot areas 1 to 7. The council must not then permit this HMO cap to be replaced with other high occupancy and character changing forms of accommodation such as guest houses and flats. Our historic areas do not have the infrastructure to support the cramming of more and more adults into what should be single dwellings. We agree and support our local community group, Glen Development Initiative, with their campaign to exclude our local areas from the LDP flat zone. CRAM proposes the council applies immediate significant weight to the LPP policy HOU 14 on HMO applications. We have been told this policy, as Kathleen said, could take years to fully adopt and leaves our area vulnerable to overdevelopment of our Victorian terraced houses. CRAM proposes that our council insists on the correct classification of HMO as C2 temporary dwellings and is proactive in the review of the parking standards document to include a parking requirement per HMO occupant, not per room. The parking standards recommendations must also be applicable in our high-density residential areas. Having policy 1 in place addressing the parking needs of different established, then that is nullified by policy 2 addressing parking zones is making a mockery of our issue. Traffic and parking in the local area is a significant safety concern. Without addressing parking with common sense, it is only a matter of time before someone is hurt or worse as a result of a traffic accident or access for emergency services. And finally, CRAM proposes the Planning Department reviews their practice from application to decision and take a more investigative and thorough processing of HMO applications and temporary accommodation applications. Planning officers should demonstrate their specialist training and knowledge beyond accepting everything at face value. Thank you.
We will now conclude our presentation with a short video and a warning that there are scenes that might cause you some distress.
Okay, thank you, and thanks Kathleen and Stella. And I have no doubt about, first of all, Stella, I don't think this is the last we're going to hear of you, because this stage of the meeting now is an opportunity for questions and answers. And even if there is no questions, I will go back to you and allow you the opportunity to respond to members. There's a few indicated speakers so far. The first I've got is online, Councillor Aeneas, then Councillor Harkin and Alderman Hussey. So, Grace, all right?
Garmaggot. Christopher, and thanks for letting me in. I'm not a member of the committee. Listen, Stella and Kathleen, thank you so much for that presentation and for that video. It was really emotive, and you know what, it's really, really powerful, and it has given me a lot of food for thought for me to, you know, think about later on this evening and discuss with the party. When we look at the HMO discussion, we can't pass it without thanking Councillor Patricia Loke for her initial highlighting of the high levels of high concentration areas of HMOs. And Patricia was very adamant that we brought in a HMO policy into the new LDP and had always had it at the forefront of all her discussions since day one of those roundtable discussions. Her diligence and persistence in highlighting this to the party helped shape the HMO policy that we ensured was written into the LDP, as before that there wasn't one. This foresight and proactive engagement in the LDP process has enabled us to have control as a council area on the concentration of HMOs in residential areas going forward, but only once the plan is adopted. But until that stage, we have listened. You know what, you know yourselves, I have been part of the McGee residents, the forum there, and we have been listening and empathising with you as residents. And this is why I brought forward the policy that any HMO application that comes above 10% on a particular street will come before the committee, and that was as part of the draft plan strategy. By doing this, it gives members of the planning committee the chance to carefully consider any decisions based on the fact that we have been listening to the concerns from residents in particular areas such as the university area. And decisions then are made based on the detriment that it would have on the residential character of that area. I hope that when I did that you can see that your aspirations and your, what you want for your area is also what we want for your area. And we want to implement what you are discussing. We're already putting measures into place to make sure that your voice is heard, and I hope that you can see that and recognise that through all the different forums and the different policies that have been put in place. Now, I do have to go back to the fact that it's regretful that there is a member of our council who is using the HMO discussion as a platform to raise fears within our communities, and I find this very stressful myself, because the concerns are being heard and there are measures being put in place, but still this continual fear is being drummed up. And I just feel that being proactive in the LDP process and actually attending the meetings rather than being reactive would have been much more beneficial to the people of the city. In terms of your request for the immediate 10% implementation, the LDP process, it belongs to all the people of the council area, and everybody has the right to be part of that consultation period and to air their opinion on where they feel those lines should be drawn. And so for that reason, it has to go through that consultation. But in the interim, please be assured that we are listening to you. We're listening to the communities. We are supporting you, and we are representing you in every application, every HMO application that comes in through the committee. We are supporting you and listening to you.
Carmichael, I don't hear a question contained within that, so I'm going to move on to Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. And obviously, I'm not a member of this committee, so I do appreciate the opportunity to speak. And first of all, I just want to commend all the people who are here as part of the CRAM delegation today. There's a big number of people, for people listening here in the council chamber today. And I also want to thank Stella and Kathleen for those excellent presentations. They were very detailed, very well researched, and I think that there are many very important proposals in there that the council and others have to take on board and give serious consideration to. I think from the outset, look, I think that we as a council should support the 10% cap demand. I think that is coming loud and clear from residents around McGee. And that is a starting point, I think, for people to feel that they're being heard and that this is a way to protect residential areas. So I think that I hope that we are able to fully support that. I'm from Rosemount, so I'm from the affected area. I have a lot of family and friends and know people there, know many people from the area. I think we've had management companies come in here at times saying people don't want to live in Rosemount, people don't want to live in that area, and it's just not true. I think that this has been an attempt to create a narrative to support a particular agenda, but I think that you see in the passion of the presentations and the number of people that are participating in this, how much people value the areas that they actually live in and the amenities that exist in this part of Derry. That don't actually exist, unfortunately, in many other areas. So Stella spoke about support for university expansion, and I think the key here is we want university expansion, but we also want residential areas protected, respected, and benefiting from the development of the city. And I think that is that's the key thing. And I think that can be done. And I think it can be done if we pay attention to what residents are actually demanding themselves. So, look, I think that Stella and Kathleen went through a lot of the proposals and ideas and concerns that they have. So I'm not going to repeat them. I think the key thing is that residents have got themselves organised and that they are now their voice is going to be heard, and that we as a council and we have to make sure the task force and Ulster University and others fully engage in a way that actually creates solutions. And it's not, people don't feel that it's just engagement and box ticking, but that there's actually a proper response and things change. I do have a couple of questions, Chair, and I'll just finish with this. So one of my questions is, you mentioned parking pressures, and do you want to talk, if you can, about specific examples of where congestion has created problems in the streets and areas around McGee? The second question I have is that you says that you have lived experiences of the planning process favouring the applicant over the objector. Could you elaborate on that? And then the third question that I have is that you mentioned the flouting of the HMO planning process by applicants and being concerned that this is going to continue. Can you give examples of where you believe that that's happened? Thank you, Chair.
With examples of the parking problems that we residents regularly experience. I have information here about 3 incidents in the area around McGee in the week beginning the 2nd of March to illustrate this. Firstly, the 9A service bus returning to Foyle Street Depot struggled to make a turn off Park Avenue, despite the best efforts of the driver and support of locals. Okay? Sorry. Cars parked illegally in the congested area around the medical centre, the corner shops and the routes to and from schools and other amenities was the immediate cause of the struggle. Later in the week, a refuge collection vehicles, you saw some of these on the video, took 20 minutes to turn onto Northern Crescent at the corner opposite BBC Radio Foyle because of illegally parked vehicles. Locals assisted the driver and the refuge workers until the police arrived and the illegally parked cars were cleared. These 2 incidents are examples of occurrences that happen frequently. Neighbours of McGee fear TransLink will cancel their bus services and that the council will replace household wheelie bins with communal waste dumpsters. The third example was in a residential street off Academy Road. The Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service took the unprecedented step of leafleting vehicles parked in the street with the message, if you can't get past, we can't save lives. This third example was in response to a Freedom of Information request from CRAM for a report concerning an incident on the 5th of February when the fire service were called to a 7-bed HMO in 16 Nicholson Terrace. They had difficulty accessing the property due to the congested street, and their vehicles blocked the entrance to Nicholson Terrace for over an hour when their children were getting out of the model school. I think, is that okay? That's just some examples of what we're witnessing regularly.
Yeah.
I'll go on and do the favour and the applicant too, I think. Let's see. Favouring the applicant. It's the same developers, landlords, agents, architects and corporate planners corresponding with the same planning officers. Information in the portal shows a clear questionable familiarity. Planning officers are chasing up applicants for information when surely it is the applicant's responsibility to submit information in the same way as objectors do. We've been aware of situations where the applicants have been deceiving vendors by giving them false information and reassurances. For example, I can promise this won't be a HMO. Retrospective planning is commonplace. It is a legal requirement for neighbours to be notified about planning application, but often residents in close proximity to the dwelling, I've already mentioned this one, are not informed and being sidelined. When more than one planning application is submitted for the street, objectors have to start the whole process. Late and sometimes altered submissions by the applicant are commonplace. Stella will now do the last one, the third.
Just about what I said about flouting. You know, make no mistake about it, student accommodation is an extremely profitable business for landlords, and it's in their interest to make as much money as they possibly can, particularly if they're running limited companies. And we see examples of flouting of HMO planning applications from the get-go. So the applications sometimes stating that the property is vacant when there's clearly someone living in there already. And, you know, it doesn't take much to walk past the property and see somebody sitting in their living room to know that somebody's in there. But also those applications sometimes have objections from the resident. So why are those applications not immediately rejected if they're not correct? Well, it's because they look more favourable. It looks favourable if you're housing or taking over a house that's currently vacant. And what we're seeing more recently is that landlords are applying for a 3 or 4 bedroom HMO and everything looks grand. And then you go to the licensing and there's a licensing for 6 or 7, 8 occupants. You know, and then that kind of it doesn't make sense in terms of the planning, because the planning is considering parking and use of utilities and loss of character. But it's made worse without having anybody to oversee it. We also see flouting in terms of the actual plans themselves. And it used to be at one point landlords were very open about the fact student houses don't have living rooms. But now we're seeing applications coming in and they're saving a living room and they have a study room too. And that looks all very nice. But then you walk past and there's a bed in the sitting room and somebody has brought their friend to live in the study room. And it appears that no one's really checking on those. And that's a blatant flouting of the planning system.
Okay. I have a few more indicated speakers, and I would ask people to be brief, and if at all possible, if there's any questions, can we keep the questions brief as well? Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kathleen and Stella, for a very detailed presentation. And can I ask that at some stage you can get copies of the full presentation that you've given to us, to myself, and I don't know if others would like that as well. Extremely detailed. 58 years ago, I was that student. My 3 children, whether it was Edinburgh or Liverpool, were those students. But the difference, when I was a student, I stayed in university student accommodation. My children, when they headed off, the eldest for his 3-year term was able to stay in university student accommodation. My 2 younger children, when they finished, their final year was when they moved out into an HMO. So the universities that they were attending, took their responsibility of housing the people that they were bringing into, whether it was Edinburgh or whether it was Liverpool, in my case Belfast or whatever. They took on that responsibility. And I see that happening in Belfast with UU. I hear tell of, whether it's private or encouraged by university, the accommodation is being provided. That is not happening in Londonderry. And it is an absolute disgrace that that is not happening. And in this chamber, my colleagues have heard me saying that before. Where is the university living up to its responsibilities? That said, you have mentioned that you attend the community forum, the university community forum. What I'm hearing is it's lip service from the university that you're getting. That's what I'm hearing. This, whilst I'm said about students, it's more than just students, you know, because there are others, HMOs, in the area. And I don't know the area. I hold my hands up. I just don't know the area. But I understand and have heard the issues that you're raising. On the issue of a 10% cap, to me, given the circumstances that you're describing, that is the end game. And you cannot get to that end game without addressing the issue earlier on as it progresses. Now, I don't know what the current percentages are in the various streets that you're talking about, but you have to address those before you actually say, well, okay, we have another 5 houses here that can become HMOs or whatever. You mentioned unruly occupants, and you've said you're not anti-student. And the first thing I think that comes into my mind is Holy Land Belfast. And I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to there. But by the way, I don't think there are too many questions in this, Chair. It's just my observations. I suppose the university, let's be honest, is a victim of its own success as well. But it has to prepare for that success, and it's not doing that. And the fact that important clients like yourself, and you are clients because you're a host community, that clients like yourself are not involved in the task force, I find strange. And I hope the chief executive here knows all about the task force, that is something that can be perhaps taken forward. With regard to the homes that are being sold to be developed as HMOs, I'm mindful of some of those may be tenant owners or tenants. Some will be homeowners. I don't know what the percentage differential is, but if they are homeowners, they are, of course, your own friends and neighbours. And, is there engagement with them to say, look, don't? Or is the economic pressure that much that that's an impossible situation to actually move to? And you can understand somebody who says, right, the way this area is developing, our option is we sell what we have and we move elsewhere and set up home in somewhere that's more desirable going forward. As I say, there are no real questions in there. It's just observations. And my final one would be, and I suppose this applies to your crammed gallery, how often do you meet and when? Because not knowing too much about it, not being a member of planning committee, I wouldn't mind going along sometime and just hearing it, the full ethos of your meetings, etc. And there was a final point on planning. Even though I think it was Grace referred to the 10% issue, and at that point it's coming to, becomes an undelegated matter. I don't know what the scenario is with HMOs. Are they all undelegated until they come to a point? But reminder that any councillor can ask for any application to be called in and has to go before planning committee. It's not just an automatic that it will run through. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Alderman Hussey, I know you repeated yourself a few times by saying you're not asking any questions, and then you proceeded to ask questions. To be fair to those that are presenting, can you ask your questions again? I know one of them was how often does the group meet? What was the other one? It was on noise and the engagement.
I've sort of lost track myself as well. If the questions are picked up well and good, and I noticed pens moving, so I think they were picked up.
Okay. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. And on behalf of the SDLP, I'd like to wish Kathleen and Stella and everybody on here, thank you for coming. So I'm originally from Rosemount, brought up on Mount Street, moved to Lawrence Hill in like the mid 1980s. I've since migrated to Waterside, but I fully understand the challenges of living in close proximity to McGee and the tech. The most obvious one that I have experience of and have witnessed on a regular basis is the parking disaster in that area. But what I also witnessed since 1985 was the changing nature of that environment. In 1985, it was all family homes. The landscape has changed dramatically since then. And university expansion, this city needs McGee to expand. You know, it's going to be a massive, massive economic generator, but it needs to expand in a manner in which existing communities and the existing character of neighbourhoods are preserved and protected. We do not want to see another Holy Lands in Derry. And I don't sit on the planning committee. I don't know the difference between the local development plan and the local policies plan. And I'm sure most people here don't. So I'm going to just put this in a very, very straight question to the chief executive or the city solicitor. There's a proposal here that we immediately introduce a cap of 10% on HMOs. So I would like some feedback from officers. Can that be done now? And if not, what can we do? And if it can't be done now, what are the actual timescales for introducing that 10% cap? Because it's needed and everybody here agrees with it. But we need to be realistic about what's achievable. So if we could get some feedback from the senior team, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I know I have questions, and I'm going to bring John or Philip on in a minute, but Councillor Donnelly.
Carmagh, Chair, and welcome Kathleen, Stella and the group in the public gallery. Look, as Councillor Farrell says, we need the university expansion, but we also need to be very respectable, or have respect for the host community. We've seen examples of how it can go pear-shaped, and nobody should have to live like that. I've been at one of the meetings in March, and one of the planning concerns that kept coming up was that the local development plan policy HOU 13 talks about how within designated HMO management areas, HMOs will not be permitted to exceed 30% of all dwelling units within the policy area. Outside these HMO management areas, planning permission will only be granted for HMO development where the number of HMOs does not exceed 10% of dwelling units on that road or street. In the transition period until the LDP local policies plan is adopted, the council will not permit more than 30% of any of the houses within any street to be granted for further HMO development. So my queries are, I'm not sure, if they can be answered here, but that given that it was 10 years, I think, to get to the adoption stage of the LDP, what is the time frame for completing the local policies plan so that residents effectively can be provided with some surety? And it could a long time frame or delay in publishing the local policies plan result in streets that would not be within a HMO management area end up with 30% of HMOs, even though they were to be capped at 10%. Has council done, or has anybody done an assessment of the likelihood of this type of situation happening? I can understand why residents who will be outside that sort of HMO management areas are fearful that the transition period mentioned in the policy could effectively lead to a rush of HMO applications in their streets, and that would effectively defeat the purpose of a 10% cap.
Okay, I'm going to pass back to Kathleen and Stella just in relation to if you've picked up any of the questions that Alderman Hussey had asked. I know there was one in relation to how often the group met, but if you can pick up on that, and then I'll bring officers on to answer Councillor Farrell's and Councillor Donnelly's.
Sorry to interrupt. As I said in the introduction, we meet regularly. We meet regularly, and we meet in the matter of need. When we feel we need to meet, when things are right and we feel there's things to address, we will meet. We also have a very active WhatsApp group, and people are on day in, day out in the WhatsApp group and recently on Facebook. So it's a very active group. If we feel we need to meet, if we feel we're going to invite somebody, we might invite. We were planning to invite yourselves actually before we requested this meeting to take part. We were going to invite some of you members to one of our meetings, but we felt this was a more open forum. This was a better way to do it. So it's as a need. Whenever we need it, we meet. I hope that's answered your question.
Yeah. Councillor Malay, I'm going to bring you in after. I want to give off. Yeah, go on ahead, Sean. Put your mic on.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm Councillor Sean Moran. I'm on the planning committee, but just that remark there, and I think was just sort of chained with me where you thought this was the appropriate forum to discuss in detail. My view would be those meetings would probably be better for us as councillors to sit down in a room and discuss, because today your presentation was, and it's obviously it's very, very welcome to hear the presentation, but there was a lot of material there for us to digest within the currency of this committee here. And for me, it would probably a much more better forum than actually go to like a work group or a different room or a different committee room just to sit down and listen to it, because then we could probably have a much more relaxed and better conversation. This is obviously open and transparent, which I welcome, and of course, but there was so much detail that I thought probably I would need to sit down and have a look at it as well. I've got the draft plan there and the documents about the Bristol City stuff, which was very interesting, which I received overnight, and I read that today. But it's probably better to have a conversation with you in a room somewhere, which is much better, more open and more relaxed than the guy there. But just for me, it's changed. You said it was much better for you to come here. My mind's thinking I'm probably better in a room somewhere where I was just sitting for 2 hours, maybe chatting, you know. Thank you.
I'm just a very brief response to that. We requested this after the meeting in McGee. We have a lot of issues, and we feel there's a lot of councillors here. So this is our way of getting across our, yeah, but it's us. This is our area. We're doing it for ourselves,
Okay,
for
here,
our residents. We're not doing it for councillors.
Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm disappointed myself in relation to how this has come around. If I had have been notified in relation to as chair of this committee, I would have pushed this towards a special meeting of council. And that's exactly what this needed, the topic needed, and invite all the councillors into the room. But I wasn't given any prior notification beforehand, and that's one I'm extremely disappointed on.
Right, Chair, that's a point I was trying to make.
I am going to, but we are now, and I think it was incredibly useful, and I am glad that residents' organisations were given the platform to air their views, and I have no doubt that every member is taking it into consideration. In relation to the question, Councillor Farrell's question around what can be done, what can we do now, and was somebody who's been part of the conversations around the 10%. I haven't heard one member of council say that the area around McGee should be within the 30% zone. And within the flat zone, I think it's widely acknowledged. It's even, the chair of the task force has indicated that there needs to be a policy direction for the direct universal expansion towards the city centre. And I think there's broad agreement with that within council. But so I don't think that there's what the residents group Graham has been asking for here is something that I hear chiming from every conversation I'm having with elected representatives from all persuasions. So there's no dispute. This is the direction that I foresee council going on. But the question is, what can we do now? And I'm going to pass over to our city solicitor on that. Philip?
Yep. I think the question, Chair, was whether or not a proposal could be taken today, and under our standing orders, a proposal in relation to this can't be taken today. The usual process would be that a committee paper would come forward in due course, and I think probably into planning committee would be the place for a committee paper to be taken forward that would update members on what can be done and where things stand at the moment. But Karen, may want to elaborate on that.
Members, we are happy to bring a paper back to the next planning committee. Obviously we have planning committee tomorrow, but the following planning committee to update members in relation to that. And Chair, if you want, I can come and do update. We can include some of the points that Councillor Donnelly has raised within that committee report as well. We do anticipate it'll be approximately 18 months to 2 years before we have our local policies plan. However, members, you will be aware that in the meanwhile, officers can give due and members and council can give due regard to the draft plan strategy. And indeed, members, as members are aware, at planning committee in January, members agreed that applications where any application may reach 10% on any street would come before the planning committee for consideration against those policies and any other concerns that have been raised as part of that particular application. But members were more than happy to bring a report and the planning committee to update members on all of these issues next month. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, you know why we requested it today then? 18 months?
Okay, Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. And just in response to Karen's sort of projected timeline for the finalisation of the local policies plan, where we're saying 18 months to 2 years, I can sense the residents aren't happy about that. I'm reading the room. So in terms of, well, we think there is broad agreement amongst the councillors that there should be a 10% cap in that area around the uni. If there is broad agreement, if that is agreed via a motion to council or some sort of proposal to planning, if that particular aspect that's going to be included in the local policies plan is signed off and agreed, can that become council corporate policy before the local policies plan is signed off, just so we can get this, what is possibly going to be a unanimous support, put into practice in those areas affected. So that would be useful to know. People don't want to wait 2 years. They want action now.
Yeah, and we absolutely, I think we're all in agreement. When we embarked on the process of LDP, nobody wanted to wait 10 years to get to this stage. I think it's in everybody's interest that we move through the process as quickly as possible. And I think we're all in agreement around where we want to get to. It's how quick we can get there. Philip, can you?
Just to say, I mean, I think from the meeting today, Philip and Karen have said we'll take all the considerations, all the suggested proposals away and bring them back into a paper, into the next available planning committee, setting out the current position, setting out the options available to members and setting out the pathways to achieve those options. So I think, because as members know, planning is a quasi-legal process. We just have to be very mindful of that. So we will consider these matters and set it out to members on paper in reports that will be publicly available for members of the public to scrutinise, providing members with the current situation and providing members with options that are available to them. I think that would be, are we comfortable with that way forward?
Is that? Sorry, can I just ask, is that the next planning meeting that you say that would be available?
Sorry, through you, Chair. The next planning meeting's only in a couple of days' time, so it won't be the next planning committee. But we will try to make it the one after that. But just bear with us while we work through that. We will, at the very latest, it'll be the one after that. But just let us work through the detail of that. But certainly, it's not the one this week, if that's what you're asking. Thank you.
But can I just add something really quickly? For the 10% discussion that's going to happen around these applications, there's a corporate planner that is blatantly stating it doesn't really matter if your application gets rejected because you'll just go to the Planning Appeals Commission and you don't have, the council doesn't have any legal documents behind it to say that you can't have your approval. So I think to date, every application that's gone to Appeals Commission, a Planning Appeals Commission, has been overturned. So therefore approved by the Appeals Commission, apart with the exception of one, which was then overturned too. So a 10% discussion doesn't mean anything because it's going to Appeals Commission and they'll say, well, there's no legal backing for this. So this needs to move quickly.
Yeah, members, I understand the frustration around it. And as a member of the planning committee who has been involved in the decision-making process, rejecting applications for HMOs in areas where there's huge constraints that have been overturned, it's frustrating. The one thing that I would like to point out and remind everybody in relation to this is that up until now, we haven't had a HMO policy to rely on. As of now, as we speak, that we do have the draft plan strategy that does have that HMO direction. So there is a defensible position that could maybe stand up to appeal, but that hasn't been tested. And I am hopeful that any applications that exceed the 10% will be upheld at plan and appeal. So we've got a defensive position, but I've got an indicated speaker, Councillor Mooney, but beforehand, I'm going to bring Director of Environment and Regeneration in.
I think, Chair, just to add to your point, just that the Planning Appeals Commission would also have to give due regard to our policy. So that hasn't been the case up until now because the policy hasn't been in force. So just to confirm that.
Okay, members, is there any further questions to Kathleen or Stella? No? I'm going to hand over to yourselves just to sum up or to make any final points before we move on with the meeting.
Just to reiterate really what we would like to happen. We want HMO, 10% cap on HMO immediately in our areas. We don't want to wait 18 months to have a meeting about it. We don't want to be relying on the Planning Appeals Commission to work well with the planners and all, and you know, and all of these things. We want it to happen now, and we want you to look after our areas as valuable parts of Derry City, historical, beautiful, valuable parts of Derry City that are just descending into, as I've already said, slum. Surely this should be priority as soon as possible.
I just want to add to that too, that someone is turning a blind eye to what's happening in the town around HMO properties. It's not just our area. If you just go to the boundary, you can see it spreading and spreading and spreading. And this is going to happen with other groups coming to deal with the same problems. So a common sense approach needs to be put to this because these are residential areas. I mean, I don't know, with the exception of maybe one or two of you, I don't know where you live, but if somebody came along to you and said, you know what, a third of your street is going to be changed to HMOs, I'm sure your neighbours and yourself would have something to say about that. Just because some residence areas aren't particularly vocal doesn't mean that there's not issues happening there too. So there needs to be a common sense approach to what is happening in the whole town.
I want to ask a question of the Chief Executive.
Okay.
Thank you. As I know you're a member of the task force, Chief Executive, do Ulster University still give letters of support to those applying for HMO license?
Chair, through you, I think that matter was dealt with by Ulster University in this chamber, and they have advised they do not do that. I'm just double checking that with Director of Environment, yes?
Yeah,
That's the case. They have advised they do not do
That
that.
process has stopped.
Members, and I just want to thank Kathleen and Stella for attending the committee today. And Stella, I'm going to pick up on a point that you made as part of your presentation, where you said that nobody knows the priorities of the local area more than residents and residents groups such as yourselves. And that couldn't be more true. And that's why it's important that residents groups like yourselves, like community organisations, the length and breadth of the city and district, are integral to this council and the decisions the council take. So I trust that CRAM will be in regular contact with council and as we progress the local development plan. I trust that that councillors will take up your opportunity to attend meetings and further engage with you. So I welcome the opportunity for you coming today, and hopefully it's the beginning of the conversation rather than a one-off. So thanks for attending today, and I'm going to ask you to leave so we can continue with the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
About 2 years plus. We're getting after one of the moratorium, channels to get sorted out. And all of them get your legal process backing on. And simple, don't pretend until you get the thing back and the framework in place. And then let developers take you to spend money. No payment moment yet. Finland to be very reasonable and the gas is 10%. I said, make it 0% and let them do the fighting. He's being reasonable. I don't think neighbours should be reasonable. We're the ones who have delivered it. Let's end it. No more HMO until you get it sorted out and McGee gets itself in gear and starts doing something.
Okay, and I know the residents that have presented here today have made their views loud and clear. The different options will be presented as a paper to a future planning committee, and I have no doubt that whatever can be done within a legal context will be done. Members, I know that was a particularly long deputation to committee. I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute break at this stage and we'll reconvene at quarter to 6. So, 10 minutes. Thanks, members. Resume. Members, moving on to item 6, chairperson's business, and I'm sure you will be glad to hear that I have no chair's business and nobody's been contacted me. No, nobody's contacted me, even to play an April Fool's prank. So moving on to item 7, the matters arising from the open minutes of the governance and strategic planning meeting held on Tuesday, the 4th of March. So pages 13 to 26, matters arising. Yeah, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Donnelly, can you put your mic on?
Brown Arm Chair. Page 19, GSP 54/25, the twinning with Gaza. Chair, in given the events that occurred outside Leinster House over the weekend and the heavy-handed assault on a group called Mullers Against Genocide, and given that in a further item in this agenda, we're going to be talking about the unacceptable, the zero tolerance of violence against women and girls, Chair. I have a short proposal that I think that this council should adopt in the aftermath of a number of women who give up their Mother's Day. They highlight the slaughter, particularly non-combatants, women and children in Gaza. The fact that they were manhandled and arrested on the Monday morning. The fact that some of these women were strip searched and one had a cavity search. I think it's completely unacceptable, and I think we need to be sending out a message from here. So I've sent a short proposal to Teresa, Chair, Paula, with your permission to consider, please. Sorry, Paula.
Okay, I haven't had sight of it yet, so wait 2 seconds. Okay, Councillor Donnelly, I know you're well aware of the need for they allow all our members an opportunity and they properly consider a proposal before voting on it or taking a decision. And I'm conscious you're aware of that. The ask of this council is they contact Mars Against Genocide and express our solidarity. I don't think that needs much consideration from members of this committee or our council, and given that it is an issue and a subject that has been at the forefront of all of our minds. So on that basis, at this time, I am content to accept the proposal that's in front of us. I'll bring in Councillor McDade. I'm assuming you're seconding the proposal. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you. Just to second the proposal and to just agree with Councillor Donnelly's remarks. When I seen the article today about women being, not just actually before the women were arrested, the Garda came and trampled over dolls that were wrapped in blankets as if babies. So they came essentially and trampled over what was supposed to be babies, and then manhandled these women away who had given up their Mother's Day. And then whenever I read strip searched and a cavity search, I genuinely nearly was sick. I can't believe that that's in any way acceptable in this day and age. So I fully agree and endorse with the proposal, and we within the SLP will be obviously supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Donnelly for bringing the proposal. And I'm glad that it was accepted today, because I, like others, have been watching this probably on TikTok over the last couple of days, to be honest, and absolutely horrified at the scenes. We had Mullers come out on Mullers Day to protest. We have seen the horrific scenes coming out of Gaza, coming out of the West Bank, of mothers, children, amputees. I actually seen a video of a man who was burying a head. That's what he had left of his son. So these are the scenes that we are seeing coming out of Gaza and out of Palestine. And we have a duty to use our voices to be heard and to be seen around these issues. And these women came together with their children, came outside the door, and the heavy-handed response from Garda Síochána has been absolutely shocking and disgraceful. I don't know who gave the order. I don't know what was going on in their heads around it, where they attacked a group of women protesting peacefully in this manner. It does need to be called out, and we do need to show our solidarity to Mothers Against Genocide. So thank you, Chair.
Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Donnelly for bringing the proposal. I think it's very important that we send our solidarity to Mothers Against Genocide, and I think it's important that we are clear in our condemnation of the police actions. This was a peaceful protest. There have been probably thousands of peaceful protests across Ireland since this genocide began, and the vast majority of them have not ended with this. So there's a question about what the Dáil government is doing right now, because as Councillor Duffy said, we need to establish why this order was given for this crackdown, why there was strip searching. I mean, and I see this as violence against women, state-led violence against women, and if there was girls there too, and it's disgraceful. But it also seems to me that there is an attempt to criminalise Palestinian solidarity. And this is one example, scaring people that if you participate in this, you're going to be confronted by the state that you're doing something wrong. There was a documentary on Friday night here in Derry about the Fulton 18, a group of young people who occupied an arms manufacturer in England who've been thrown in jail. And it's absolutely wrong, thrown in jail for trying to stop a genocide. And I do just to mention that that there was an action that a number of people, including Councillor Donnelly, participated in at Home Bargains here in Derry, where the police turned up and arrested people, took people to the barracks, and those charges, fortunately, have been dropped, and they were dropped in Strabane as well. So this just seems to be, whether it is the PSNI, the Garda, or the British police, attempts again and again to criminalise people in order to kind of break up this movement and stop the solidarity. So I think that us expressing our solidarity with Mothers Against Genocide is very, very important, but we have to look at this broader issue about what the state is trying to do, because it goes against the wishes of many millions of people across this island. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Alderman Hussey.
Specifically on the proposal, I haven't the slightest notion of what it's about, or I've seen nothing with regard to it. So I will need to abstain on the particular motion. I'd remind Councillor Donnelly, it's not twinning with Gaza, it's twinning with the city of Bethlehem, which is in the West Bank. And while we're on this, I don't know if anybody's seen the issue of protesters with regard to accommodation for asylum seekers, refugees in the Republic, where again, PSNI, and Garda Síochána seem to have treated one of the protesters quite roughly, and that they're an elderly lady, but I don't see that mentioned. But as with specific regard to the motion before us, I will be abstaining.
Okay, members, there's no further indicated speakers. With the exception of Alderman Hussey, is there broad support for the motion, the proposal? Yeah, so I'm going to note Alderman Hussey's abstention and endorsement from the rest of the committee. So that'll go forward to, and Alderman Wilkinson would also like to abstain. Any further chairperson's business? Or not, or matters arising, apologies. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just, it'll probably be brief, but I just wanted to mention, it's GSP/57/25. I just wanted to mention that, that the Newgate Arts, the Northwest Cultural Partnership held a meeting on constitutional change on Saturday in the Fountain at the Newgate Arts Centre. And I believe it was possibly one of the first meetings of its kind, in the sense that it was held in what people would see as, a Protestant area or a Unionist area. And I just want to commend the organisers of the meeting. It was an excellent meeting. I mean, there was a lot of debate there. And I think that different positions were very well represented, but it was done in a very, very respectful way, I thought. There was one issue that a number of women raised and others that were at the meeting about the lack of diversity in the panel. And I think that was taken on board by the organisers. There was a number of councillors from different political groupings here in the council attending. It was disappointed that it wasn't attended by the DUP or the UUP, and to my knowledge, maybe that's wrong. But for me, look, there was a lot of stuff that I think people need to take on board. The thrust of the discussion for me was that, how is this going to improve the lives of working class people in the north? How is it going to improve the lives of working class people in the south? And how can we envision an Ireland that will actually, where working class people will be better off and have better lives? And I thought that this opportunity to have that discussion out, even where there was a lot of disagreement, where there was clarification, I thought it was a very, very positive engagement, and I'm glad I went to it, and I'm glad that there's been positive coverage of this event, and fair play to the organisers for taking that step. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. It's an event that I didn't get the opportunity to attend, but I've attended others in the past, and which I've found extremely interesting. And they were always held. The conversations are taking place. There's no doubt about that. There's particularly within civic unionism, and I think they're healthy. They're very and at some stage, I think the message needs to get out that the conversations inclusive, and they're happening. Whether people bury their heads in the sand or not, but bringing Councillor Duffy in and then Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and just to concur with Councillor Harkin, myself and Councillor Heaney attended on behalf of Sinn Féin, well, really because we had an interest in it. We've seen it advertised, and I have to say it was a really enjoyable event, and it was really well attended for a Saturday morning. And the speakers, the breadth of speakers that were there, covering many different views, many different aspects, and everybody took a position and had their position around where they were coming from, which is useful in a debate to know those things. There were people in the room who obviously don't have a position, but it's good to have them in the room too, to allow these conversations to take place. I know what my position is, and the meeting didn't change that, but it's really good to see these conversations taking place, and the debates and the conversations around it, even outside the hall. So I just welcome the fact that it took place, and glad that I had the opportunity to attend. So thank you.
Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Just for information, I had intended to be there, but the event clashed with a party spring conference, and that would apply to my two colleagues as well. And I had already submitted an apology to Brian on Wednesday, in fact, when I was at another meeting with Brian. So just to make things clear that it wasn't a boycott. It was simply that other events were taking place. Thank you, Chair.
Delighted to hear that, and honestly am. Councillor Mooney, and then Councillor.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me on. On that note, I had a clash on Saturday too. I was looking to attend, but unfortunately I couldn't make it. But just to say, it was very welcome that it was held where it was, and there was engagement from the PEL community. That's what we're looking for in our own constitutional working group for that engagement as well. But welcome to see it, and I wish I had got a chance to go along. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Donnelly.
Good Chair, and Chair, I attended it too. And probably for the first time in that type of scenario, I actually felt comfortable and enjoyed the conversations. Sometimes when you go to debates like this, they're usually controlled and stacked, the audiences and that, and sometimes there's just not that sort of, don't feel comfortable, or sometimes you say, what is the point? But I do say that to me, it was educational, and I've learned a lot from it, particularly from I don't want to say the unionist speakers, because they said they described themselves as not staunch unionists, but there was a lot of information. And also think that having conversations at it and conversations during breaks, I think it's important to point out that, it's not just two options here. It's not the status quo or the extension of a 26 county state to a 32 county state that is a Republican, that there, and these flaws and were pointed out by some of the unionist commentators of the sort of state of the 26 counties. So I thought that was very, very interesting, and I have to say again, I'd like to commend Newgate for having the courage to do it. I don't believe they sacrificed anything for that. They're no less a unionist today, even though I'm politically opposed to unionism, and I want to see the end of unionism. But they had the courage and conviction to organise it and allow people to come in and give what was on their mind, give what was in their heads. So thoroughly enjoyable. Thank you.
Okay, and I hope that message will be relayed to the organisers. It was a fantastic initiative, and I have no doubt that it'll be replicated the length and breadth of the island. So, any further matters arising? Moving on to item 8, and its response to the Department of Finance supplementary consultation on domestic written measures. And Alfie is going to take us through that.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the report is for you to consider and endorse responses by Council to the supplementary consultation on domestic rating measures. Members, this is a follow-up to two previous consultations, one in November 23, which covered a number of aspects of both domestic and non-domestic rating, and also the business rates public consultation back in 2019. Both of which we submitted comprehensive responses to, and we had a number of key principles underlying our previous responses. One, that rates should be based on wealth and ability to pay. 2, that a fundamental reform of the rating process was required. 3, that the current system needed modernised and fit for purpose. And 4, that rates generally favour ratepayers and more wealthy and less deprived in rural councils. So members, this present consultation focuses on 2 very specific reliefs within the domestic rating system. The consultation is a response deadline of 25th of April, and this report allows councils to consider its response and incorporate members' comments as required. Members, there's a good bit of detail in the report, obviously, around the background to the proposals, and along with Council's proposed responses, which are very much based on our previous responses to these types of consultation. So, members, the first relief, or the first proposal, is to increase the maximum capital value cap and domestic rating from 400k to 485k. The proposed response within the report, and subject to your comment, which is in line with what we responded to the November 23 consultation, is that the current maximum value should be retained at the 400k level, pending a wider review of the rating system in Northern Ireland, which we believe favours more wealthy and less deprived in rural councils. Normally, members, I think our underlying principle would be that rates income should be based on wealth and ability to pay. And if the cap were to be uplifted, it would make sense that it's confined to a maximum capital value. Otherwise, rates bills for high value properties would be unreasonable. And the current proposed 485k level would ensure that rates levels here are no higher than within the other tax systems within the UK. However, against that, members, there's a couple of key issues. Firstly, domestic properties haven't been revalued since 2005, so valuations are extremely outdated. And secondly, and probably more importantly from this council's perspective, the key impact of removing or uplifting the cap would be that significant disparities would be created. So you'll be aware the average rating property value in this council area is 97k. Compares to 148k in the likes of Argent North Down and an overall NI average of 122k. So obviously as a result of that, we have to raise higher rates poundages to generate the same levels of rates income. Any changes to the relief would therefore further exacerbate these differences, and in the report it's reported out of the 2 million that would be generated for local councils, 1.5 million of that would effectively go to two councils, Argent North Down and Belfast, whereas only 30k would come here. So members, whilst the additional rates income would be welcomed, our proposed response would be that it can't create further disparities in district rates burdens and public service provisions between councils, and that any change to the relief should only be considered in conjunction with that wider review that has been proposed within the report. The second proposal is reducing the early payment discount from 4% to 2%. The proposed council response in the report is to reduce to the preferred option of 2%, but again that should be further considered in conjunction with the wider review I've just outlined. Members, the key point to note is that the relief and subsequent cost to the executive again favours more wealthy ratepayers. Evidenced 5.6 of ratepayers in this council area avail of the relief, which is well below that in other council areas. So the suggestion in the report is that we would propose that the additional revenue generated would be used to fund policy interventions to help councils like ourselves. So our proposed response sets out that it is important that some level of relief is retained. That's on the basis that rate and debt levels have increased significantly following the pandemic, so some incentives should remain in place to ensure payment. So last point, members, NILCA will obviously be submitting a response. This draft response has been shared, and obviously any comments from members today would be added and incorporated within that. And the recommendation is that you're asked to consider and approve the proposed responses as highlighted in the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Alfie. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alfie, for the report and the detail in it. I have to say I'm happy to propose it. I think it's a fair reflection of where we're at. I have to say around not the discount, pull it up there so I can see what I'm doing. The max cap. I think that it is really important that we don't endorse something that is going to create further regional disparity for this area. We have been working for quite some time now around addressing regional balance for this area, and I think, as you have pointed out, the max cap would only really benefit two councils, which are already two of the councils which are probably the most affluent anyway. So it would create further disparity here for this council area. So I think that it's important that we endorse that one. And around the incentivisation, I think that that's fair enough because you do want to have some sort of incentive. But again, I don't know very many people that pay off their rates bill in one go. So I think that it's a fair reflection as well. So happy to endorse the report there, Alfie, and thank you for the work that you've done on it. Thank you.
I'll take that as a proposal. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. I have one clarification reference the maximum cap and the assessment of 5,435 per annum within the UK council tax system. I presume that doesn't include water rates, which are paid on UK mainland, whereas our water rates are included within our rates. So it's not a direct comparison, if my reading of that is correct. I agree with the majority of the report, and I'm happy to second Sandra's proposal on it. I would be doubtful reference the early payment discount reducing from 4 to 2. As has been said, not many people here do it, but those that do should be continued to be encouraged to do so. But that aside, the overall content of the report I'm content with and happy to second. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I know there was a question in there in relation to what's happening here in Britain.
Is the comparison between the rate system in UK, which is the council tax, but council tax doesn't include water rates, which are paid separately. So it's not actually a direct comparison with our rate system because water rates are included in our rates when we pay them.
Okay, that's a statement rather than a question. Yep, it's a statement rather than a question. Alfie, do you want to put?
Just asking, is that correct?
The comment has been lifted directly from the consultation, which I would assume is making a direct comparison, but I'm happy to go and clarify that.
Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alfie, for the report. We're sort of in agreement with the recommendation. Our view is that ratepayers right across this city and district are being crucified due to the failure of Stormont to invest in the rate support grant. It's been cut to ribbons. It's been torn to shreds over the years. It's gone from £4 million in 2008 to a projected £600,000 in the next financial year. And we don't think that increasing the burden on anybody due to the rateable value of their house should be encouraged. In terms of the early payment option, we think reducing the already stingy 4% to 2% is probably not the way to go. But if there was a cast iron guarantee that any savings derived from that were invested in the rate support grant, we would support that. So we're half and half.
Okay, well, there's a decision to be made very quickly. So we've got a proposal that's seconded by Alderman Hussey.
Chair, I'm going to be worse than half and half. I'm going to abstain for the minute. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got support indicated. We've got an abstention, and then we've got people that are sitting on the fence. So I'm going to ask John to take us through a vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Alderman Hussey.
Or
Alderman Wilkinson. Councillor Donnelly.
Abstain.
Councillor Sandra Duffy.
Ta.
Councillor Farrell. Councillor Hart.
Ta.
Councillor Heaney.
I had to jump off.
Councillor Jackson.
Ta.
Councillor McDaid. Councillor McGinley. Councillor Mooney. Councillor Farrell. Councillor Tierney. Thank you, members. 9 for Chair, no members against and 1 abstention.
Okay, members, that has passed. Moving on to item 9, the calendar of meetings, and members,
so proposed.
It's on your pack. I'm going to take a proposal from Councillor Farrell, seconded by Alderman Hussey. No dissenting voices. Members take note of those dates and times for meetings. Item 10, zero tolerance zone for violence against women and girls. Alan?
Yep, through you, Chair. This report provides advice to members on a proposed approach to operationalising Council's commitment to implementing a zero tolerance zone for violence against women and girls in this council area, and also to seek your comments and endorsement in relation to a proposed approach and a phase 1 action plan. As indicated in the report, a motion came forward in January declaring that the council area should be a zero tolerance zone for violence against women and girls, and also noting as well in terms of the report itself that whilst men and boys also suffer from violence and abuse and harm, the majority of victims are female, and violence against women and girls is predominantly but not exclusively a pattern of behaviour perpetrated by men against women. The report also provides a bit of background information in terms of gender-based violence, and again notes that it disproportionately affects women, whilst it also covers areas of sex, gender, sexual orientation and/or gender identity. The report highlights the Northern Ireland Strategic Framework and notes again as well that there are a pyramid of gender-based violence which includes systemic inequalities, damage in culture, damage in attitudes and belief, and unwanted behaviours and criminal offences. That document also highlights at 2.5 a number of types of actions that can fall under this category of violence against women, and ends with the everyday harm caused by everyday misogyny, sexist jokes and language. So there is a scale of behaviours. In terms of defining a zero tolerance approach, I think, as I said in the report, it starts with attitudes and societal norms and less visible actions up until open actions of violence. And in order to address and take forward a zero tolerance approach, there are a number of key elements, such as clear messaging, prevention measures, including cultural change, victim-centred approach to support services, and strong deterrence. In terms of the key issues highlighted in this report, in terms of the framework, there are a number of outcomes, 6 in total, which are identified, and the report highlights that outcomes 1 to 3 are particularly relevant in terms of the council because they're protection measures, and also 6 in terms of facilitating government and society working better together to end violence against women and girls, which is, again is consistent with the motion that was passed. So in terms of really the phase 1 action plan, which is included in the pack, is seen as an initial step in developing a model of collaboration across all sectors of our local society, and aims to ensure that council promotes values such as gender equality and inclusiveness, respect, dignity and safety, and therefore represents an example of good practice to other organisations in terms of leading the way. And subject to approval, the next stages after that phase 1 would involve the engagement of other sectors and bodies, including the Growth Partnership, to capture existing initiatives, to add to a draft overall action plan, and to facilitate a coordinated and joint up approach to implementing a zero tolerance zone for the council area. That overall plan would be, as highlighted in the report, would be subject to public consultation prior to finalisation. So the recommendations in front of members today is subject to your comments that the proposed approach and phase 1 action plan are endorsed. Thank you, members.
Okay, Councillor McGinley.
Mega Chair, and thank you, Ellen, for the report and for the work that's gone on the putting the action plan together. This is a relatively recent motion, so it's good to see that it's been actioned in such a swift manner. And I think, you know, as we see this be rolled out through the various phases, we need to make sure that we are enforcing what we say when we say that it's zero tolerance, means zero tolerance in terms of violence against women and girls, and that applies to everybody right across the district, because this issue is far, far, far too important and we need to tackle it head on. I'm happy to propose the recommendation that's on the report.
Thanks, Emma. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to second the report. Thank you, Ellen, for it. It's so detailed. It's unbelievable. I was trying to just, last night I was going through the kind of actions that we're going to be taking forward, and it's amazing. You're kind of covering everything, and it's really well laid out and easy read for me. So I like things nice and simple and straightforward. It's very good for my way my brain works. While we've been during this meeting, I've got an alert on my phone that there's been a guilty outcome at court in County Meath of a man who killed another woman. You know, it's just, it happened 3 years ago, but it's just another court where a man has come through and he's murdered his partner. And there's a stream of information about the abuse that this woman was put through before she was murdered. So it's just really, for me, it's so important to keep the victims at the centre of this and the survivors at the centre of this. And I'm blown away by the amount of detail on it. And I just want to point out, especially one of them in Outcome Area 3, about the lighting and maintenance of council-owned parks and greenways. I'm going to say it again, Bay Road. And I know there is other ones, and I know it's in there, came through planning recently, but it's just, I know money's tight and everything else, but I do think this needs to be prioritised, because lighting, and we're all right now at this time of year, it's getting brighter and we can go out walking, but autumn won't be far coming again, so we really need to have that done ASAP. But thank you very much, and happy to endorse her.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Donnelly.
Good. Chair, anything that improves the life of women or reduces misogyny or crimes against women has to be promoted and adopted and fostered. You know, but I think that within this too, in my opinion, it doesn't really, there's something, you know, a lot deeper, and it's the state use of violence and that type of attitude and capitalism. You know, that if you look at any statistics, that, you know, there's a high number of women who don't have confidence in police force or the ability to investigate crimes against them. A significant number of women said that they would not report a crime to police again. We have a judicial system that's not, you know, and to be careful what I'm saying here, but it's not fit for purpose. We have the added issues with the complex political situation in this state and indeed in both states, where we have so-called justice systems that are different. But even in states that don't have these problems, these type of issues exist. I think if we look what happened, the women protesting outside Leinster House, where, you know, the state was prepared to use, in my opinion, violence to remove them from the street and then carry out strip searches. You know, we live in a state here that used widespread systematic sexual harassment, not only on the streets but in prisons, by strip searching female prisoners. That type of option is still open to the state, should it decide that it needs to use it. And people can say, you know, oh, that's him again saying this, and I'm going to mention it again, this council organised a good relations event where young people from across this city and in different communities, and I think it was in the 80s, said that they don't believe, first of all, they don't trust the apparatus, i.e. the PSNI, and secondly, they don't think that they're doing enough. And we need to be digging into that, and we need to be saying what is happening here if we're trying to have a real meaningful change. And I think we need to do more at the home. We need to do more in education. But I just want to I want to put on record them opinions. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donnelly. I have no further indicated speakers. And we've got a proposal from Councillor McGinley, seconded by Councillor McDade. I am assuming that there's unanimous support. Okay, and again, just to add my voice around the importance for us to progress this. I'm delighted to see it here, but picking up on the comments from the chamber is that, no, the zero tolerance can't be just words. We need actions as well. And the progress they did is very much welcome, but we can't have a scenario where women and girls feel unsafe in our society within this council area. And every effort must be made by every single one of us. They stamp out misogyny. They stand up and stand against those that are diminishing the victim's voice in all of this. So I'm delighted to see comprehensive work being done on behalf of council. Item 11, enterprise champion training. Again, Ellen.
Through you, Chair. This report seeks to advise members of correspondence received from the NAC and to seek nominations for members to participate in enterprise champion training. As highlighted in the report, there are 4 workshops scheduled and being provided via NAC, the first of which is the 25th of April. Members, as I say, nominations are required, and obviously the NAC are encouraging that any nominees attend all 4 workshops. They're also suggesting that 3 or 4 nominations from each council, and at the council's discretion, one of those may be an officer. I would note, members, that the NAC require the details by the 10th of April, so therefore the recommendation is that if you're so minded to provide nominations to attend those 4 learning development workshops on planning and delivering sustainable local enterprise. Thank you, members.
Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I declare non-pecuniary interest as one of the council NAC reps, one of the 8 representatives from council, and also a member of NAC Executive and Vice Chair of NAC UK. This particular course was firstly brought to the attention of the NAC by its chairman, and there have been some preparatory work carried out in conjunction with the Ulster University, and one of the courses was actually held in UU here in the city, and I know that there were attendees of that. I will not be making a proposal. I will abstain on the proposal given my non-pecuniary declaration, but I would urge that members consider the issue going forward as one that can assist this council in its own ambitions, just as much as it will assist other councils throughout Northern Ireland. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Ellen, for the report. Definitely see the opportunity around this training course, especially given the local enterprise partnerships that are going to be coming online very, very soon. I notice that the workshop, they're encouraging 4 participants from this council area, at least 1 officer, which would leave 3 remaining councillors. The process we normally have for this is that there'll be a representative from each party and then 1 from the independent bloc. Has council got a view on maybe increasing that number from 4 to allow 1 from each designation within here? Thank you. But happy to propose.
Through you, Chair, we can certainly go back to the NAC. Their suggestions was 3 to 4, and 1 of which could be an officer, but as long as we pay the fee for each of the participants, I'm sure they would encourage that as well. Thank you.
We'll nominate a full council.
If it needs the nominations as priority full council. So if you're not in a position to nominate now, I would suggest that nominations are emailed to Ellen. Yep. But prior to the 10th of April. Councillor Duffy.
Chair, just to confirm that we will email any nominations that we might have. I have to say, though, that the cost is quite significant per person, and I'm assuming the council is picking up that cost.
Through you, Chair, yes, it is. And there is scope within, because we're at the start of a new financial year within the member development budget to cover those costs, if members obviously see it as a priority. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a proposer, but we don't have a seconder that we will nominate. So Councillor Duffy has seconded. Alderman Hussey.
Just to follow up on that, a nomination will go forward from the Ulster Unionist Party and will be with you before the cut-off date.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
About the price, whenever we're just looking, is it 395 per person? So it's times 4, or is that for the 4?
It's for 4. For 4, it says 395.
I know, it says
£100
per person for all 4, so it's for all 4 courses, right? Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
£400 per person.
Aye, so £1,600 for. Thank you.
No, thanks for that clarity, because I cleared that up for myself. So we've got a proposer from Councillor Farrell, seconded by Councillor Duffy, and nominations will follow in advance of the. I don't hear any dissenting voices, so I'm taking that as approved. Item 12, updated protocol and deputations.
Yeah.
So proposed.
Yeah, thank you.
Proposed Councillor Farrell, seconded Councillor McGinley. Item 13, the review of the safeguarding policy. Ellen?
Yeah, again, through you, Chair. This is to report presents to members with a revised safeguarding policy for children and young people and then the accompanying documentation at Appendix 1 and 2. And I would highlight in terms of the background, we have had child safeguarding policies in place from 2006, but then we combined them with adults at risk. This policy now sets the two aside separately again and puts an emphasis on ending violence against women and children in it. So as I say, essentially the document it has streamlined a number of the procedures and includes informed consent from a children's point of view, but also procedures around recruitment, selection, safeguarding code of conduct, risk assessments, photography and technology training, support for staff and guidance in a code of conduct for any contractors that operate on behalf of council. Again, the recommendations in front of members, subject to your comments, that the safeguarding policy, children and young people, is approved and fully implemented. Thank you, members.
Okay, Councillor McDade.
Right, thank you, Chair. Just thanks, Ellen, for that, and happy to propose a report. It's obviously of significant importance, and we need to be doing everything to keep children safe. Thank you.
Councillor McGinley.
For my good, Chair, and also thanks to Ellen and the team for the report for the updated policy. I'm content to second the recommendations. As Catherine said there, it's a really, really important topic and we need to be doing all we can to keep people safe. So thank you.
Okay, and I just want to give my apologies to Alderman Kerrigan, who you had indicated in the previous item, and I just missed it in the chat box, so my apologies.
No problem.
In relation to the item in front of us, proposed by Councillor McDade, seconded by Councillor McGinley. There's no other indicated speakers in the chamber or online, so I'm going to take that as passed unanimously. So item number 14, and members, I apologise and on behalf of officers in relation to this, because I know that the mineral prospecting licenses, particularly in relation to Dalradian, is something that this committee and this council feel very strongly in relation to, and it would be normal practice that we would have sight of a consultation response, and we would have time to consider it beforehand. So I know it's unusual for us to give delegated authority on it, but I have been assured that it was outside of our control. But pass over to yourself, Karen. Are you taking this?
Yeah, through you, members, as as members will be aware, we updated Environment and Regeneration Committee back in January that the department intended to issue these licenses and that they would open a consultation period. Members, you will recall that members agreed that we would appoint specialist consultants in order to assist us in terms of considering the consultation process and assist with a response to the consultation report. We did appoint those consultants. It was 2 consultants that had worked with us through the judicial review process. Members, we have only just received the response from the first consultant today, this morning, and the second consultant has advised us they will send through the information tomorrow. Therefore, unfortunately, members, we weren't able to bring a draft response to members prior to the consultation response deadline on Friday. So what we would propose is that we would draft a response based on the information sent through by the consultants, but we would advise the department that we intend to bring that draft response to elected members. And then if members have any further comments, that we would then make the department aware of that. And in speaking to the lead legal services officer, we believe that the department would have to consider any further responses, even if it is after Friday. So members, if you're happy with that, we will do that. And I fully appreciate that we would have much preferred to have brought a comprehensive consultation response to you. However, it's outside our control at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Chair. And you have stated some of the points that I was going to make, but happy to propose the approach of delegating authority to the officer team. As you say, we would like to have seen these reports prior to submission in order to scrutinise them. However, with the short time frame that they need to be in, that's not possible. It's not an ideal situation, but as I say, we would expect to see it a full report at either the next full council or this meeting. So thank you and happy to propose.
Councillor Mooney.
Yes, Chair, just happy to second the proposal by Councillor Hurd. Obviously, given exceptional circumstances outlined by Karen, and given the fact that we can't have any site of any report, well, happy to delegate authority to the officers in that event anyway. But we would be grateful if we can maybe receive any documents if we can, prior to submission, if that's possible. Thank you.
Okay. Members, so proposed from Councillor Hart, seconded by Councillor Mooney. There's no further.
Through you, Chair, members, just to add to that, you know, the information that we received this morning on first reading, the consultants are advising us that there are issues that they consider would mean that this consultation process isn't robust either. So we will be able to make that point to the department.
Well, I think we all look forward to seeing that response. So whether it's in this committee or Environment and Regeneration, I have no doubt that members will look out for it. We've got a proposer from Councillor Hart, seconded by Councillor Mooney. There's no further indicated speakers, and there's no dissenting voices, so that is passed unanimously. Members, items number 15 to 22 are open for information. I'm going to go through each of them. Item 15, engagement with residents in houses of multiple occupation. There's been considerable discussion and noise in that today. So number 16, the Northwest Partnership update. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. In the December minutes of the Northwest Partnership, we had the update that the 16.7 million funding for Riverine has been approved. Would it be possible at some stage just to have an update on progress with regard to Riverlea.
Through you, members happy to bring an update to Environment and Regeneration Committee. The project is progressing at pace and we will be able to update members accordingly.
Thank you. Item 17, plan for neighbourhoods. No. Item 18, complex lives. Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, just to come on in relation to complex lives and thank the officer team for the work that they have done on it. And it has again been a quick turnaround in terms of the report. I should declare an interest. But as somebody who works within the homeless sector, I actually really welcome the report and welcome the outcomes of it. We do have a very bespoke circumstances here within the city. Around our homeless population and what we've been doing. The report very clearly outlines a lot of the agencies that are currently involved in a lot of work. We have the Health and Homelessness and Equality group, subgroup that's working through council. It's at very tentative early stages as well, where we're bringing in a lot of the homeless organisations that are working throughout the city and district, because we're bringing in Strabane as well. So there's work going on. The Concern Hub has been invaluable to the city. We have our rough sleeping strategy and we have just been appointed at First Housing in terms of the West Area High Support, which was the Derry Dime. So that is all coming on board over probably the next couple of weeks. So we're at a really good stage in trying to address some of the issues that we have. So I think that we would be jumping the gun if we were going to bring in complex lives at this point. But I do think that further scoping with the partners, support partners particularly, and the trust would be useful around some of the issues that we have. But at this stage, I don't think lifting complex lives as it is in Belfast and bringing it here would work. We have a very unique population here and support network here that work very well together as it is. So maybe we could just look at strengthening that. But thank you for the report and the work that was done on it. And I look forward to further information. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duffy, and we look forward to a further report coming back. I know this came on as part of the emergency accommodation presentations, but what happened within this chamber, and I think it was well laid out that this is a very complex issue, and whilst there's a project in Belfast, the complexities of the issue can't be overlooked. So it would be good to see a bespoke model for this council area, and we look forward to seeing how that could look. So no further indicated speakers on this. Item 19, NI Housing Council update. No. 20, findings of the councillor satisfaction survey. No. 21, electoral office ID applications and website. No. And the forward schedule of deputations, Councillor Hussey.
It's just to reflect on today's meeting's experience with deputations coming to committees. And I honestly feel that at some stage we have got to look at how we deal with deputations coming in and coming into committee, rather than a special meeting of council where an issue can be dealt with. It could be the case that maybe 2-3 deputations come in, to a special meeting of council, rather than clogging up committee business. I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah,
Chair. I've made it before.
Yeah, I know the point's been made. I just wouldn't think that deputation was very unique, and Councillor Farrell.
Yep, thank you, Chair. So it's in relation to the deputations for next month in May. So it's saying in terms of the DFC, Western Trust, Department of Health coming here to talk about Fort George. Like, this was initially raised in May of last year. It hasn't happened yet. It's still saying to be confirmed. Is that confirmed? And I'm conscious that there's a further deputation scheduled for that meeting as well. So are we going to be discussing Fort George?
Sorry, Chair, just to confirm, we had a meeting with DFC last week and they have confirmed in that meeting that they will be attending the May meeting. Yeah, and sorry, just to confirm as well, members of committee, committees are scheduled to take place to up to 4 hours. So there is normally plenty of scope for up to 2 deputations, subject to your consideration going forward, of course.
Okay, your notes or your comments are noted, Alderman Hussey, and I want to ask, it comes to the end of open business, so can I have a proposal to go into confidential? Councillor Mooney, seconded by Councillor McDade.